In the old days, the Virginia Cavaliers would probably have more motivation than Missouri in the Gator Bowl. But that's the thing about the old days. They're the old days.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, I'm going to talk more about Missouri's new offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey, including the Auburn perspective on his time there. Also, what happened when he was the head coach at Troy? Does it actually matter? And also going to get into some Missouri basketball as well. Quickly, before I start the program, do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. And indeed, I got to start talking about the Gator Bowl. I have to say, I've been a little bit, derelict in my duties, let's just say, the past couple weeks. Maybe not talking about the Gator Bowl enough, but hey, the game's tomorrow, no time like the present. And as is often the case, you got to ask yourself in these bowl games, which side is going to be the more motivated side? And as I said, in the olden days, you would think, well, This is a Virginia team that doesn't get a lot of chances, obviously, at 10-win seasons. If Virginia wins tomorrow, in fact, that would be the first 11-win seasons in its program history. So in the old days, I think Virginia would be the much more motivated side. You would think that was at least my initial thought. But then the more I thought about it, put yourself in the Cavaliers' shoes. Virginia just took an absolutely crushing loss to Duke, losing out on not only, of course, the ACC title, but a berth in the college football playoff as well. And of course, as we all know, in 25 here heading into 26, the college football playoff is becoming all-consuming. And I think, even for a program like Virginia just falling just short of that mark, hey, we'll see what kind of program Virginia really has tomorrow, in my opinion, what kind of locker room they really have. Because in the past, I think Missouri tends to play pretty hard in these games. Now, we'll see this season, but who is playing for Missouri, by the way? Well, I'll say this, the Cavaliers appear to be basically at full strength. Of course, Matt Zollers is going to start at quarterback for Missouri, and you got to say this is at least a partial audition for 2026 for Zollers. Of course, this is not going to be, I wouldn't say the final and total determination here, but if Zollers goes out and has a really impressive game here, obviously that'll go a long way to solidifying Missouri's faith in him. And maybe that means Missouri doesn't have to be as aggressive in the quarterback transfer portal market, at least at this moment, that I'm assuming that they're going to be. Again, if Zollers can ball out in the Gator Bowl tomorrow, that can maybe change that equation a lot. So again, I think if Zollers maybe just has a so-so performance, maybe a below-average performance, I don't know that that's a final determination for him and his career at Missouri. I do think, though, that probably solidifies the idea that Missouri will need to be aggressive in the quarterback market looking for a potential starter. But regardless, Josh Manning, Marquise Johnson, also gone from the roster, entering their names into the portal. So Missouri going to be down a couple receivers there. Sounds like Kevin Coleman is going to be good to play, though. Ahmad Hardy is going to be going for the Missouri rushing record, whether that's, Cody Schrader's number of more than 1,600 yards or Devin West's number of more than 1,700 yards if you include, the bowl game in 1998, which for some reason or another, bowl game stats didn't count then, but they count now. I don't know, some weird vagaries there. But regardless, Ahmad Hardy is going to be playing a lot, I think, for Missouri in tomorrow's ball game. And I think that's a huge deal because, Virginia is obviously they're a good team, but if you can lose to Duke, no offense to Duke, I just think that Missouri up front in the running game on both sides of the ball is going to be a real challenge for the Cavaliers. And by the way, on that defensive side of the ball, well, basically the Tigers should be full strength outside of Josiah Trotter, who had a minor knee injury and surgery. Now, this procedure here in the past few weeks, got injured in the tail end of the Arkansas game, so he's going to be out, and obviously that's a big deal for Missouri. But otherwise, it looks like, for example, Damon Wilson and Zion Young, the two, I would say, NFL quality pass rushers that Missouri has, looks like they're both going to be playing. I haven't seen a lot of signs of other opt-outs from Missouri outside of there's an injury there with Trotter, and obviously on the offensive side of the ball, there's been some guys transfer out. But in terms of the two deep right now on defense, looking like that, what was obviously a great unit for Missouri this past season, looking like they're going to be pretty close to full strength. I will say on Zion Young, by the way, Drinkwitz did say he was going to handle his DUI situation. He was arrested on suspicion of DUI here in the past few weeks. So he did say he was going to handle that internally. So if he's suspended for some portion of that game, I don't think Drinkwitz is going to tell us. But it certainly doesn't sound like either Zion or Damon Wilson are opting out. And I think that's actually a smart move for their NFL prospects, because to me, unless you're solidified yourself as a top 10 type pick like Armand Mimbu did last year, well, in my opinion, sitting out the bowl game it might backfire on you. Like, if anything, I think it backfired on Luther Burden III last year when, again, he may have thought he'd solidified himself as a top 15 to 20 pick at the time when he opted out of the game, but obviously Burden ends up going about 40th overall early in the second round. So did that backfire on him or not? I just don't think sitting out the bowl game helped. If you're on the borderline of being a first-round pick, like clearly Burden was, I just don't think sitting the game out actually helps you. So, in other words, hey, I think everything's going to work out for Burden in the long run. He's probably pretty happy to be in Chicago right now, especially with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams in a pretty good ball club right now. But the point here is I think it's actually smart for both Wilson and Zion Young to play in this game and help solidify their status and, well, hopefully go out on a winning note for the Tigers as well. And with all of that said, Missouri certainly has its advantages in this game, but Virginia very much has the advantage at experience at the quarterback position. Chandler Morris in his 6th season of college football. But you know what? I think Corey Batoon may have the answer for that young man. But do I have the guts to pick Missouri to win tomorrow? Well, let's find out here in a little bit, and also put in perspective just how bad that loss in bragging rights was coming up here in just a little bit. But you know what? I do have to tell you about FanDuel, because this time of year, NFL Sundays move very fast. One play and suddenly everything has changed. Well, that's why live betting with FanDuel is so exhilarating. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. I'm a big fan of betting at halftime, quite honestly. It gives you a chance to sit back, and while the action does move fast, sometimes it almost moves a little bit too fast. I think halftime betting provides you an opportunity there with live betting to, well, maybe take advantage of an opportunity. Hey, you're actually sitting there watching the game play out. Well, a lot of times, frankly, the computers are just reacting to numbers. Maybe you're seeing something they don't. I think live betting can provide you an edge if you're selective about it. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com, and you can place your NFL live bets all season long. It is FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. And as I said before, Virginia looks like it's going to be basically full strength, as close as you can be going into a bowl game these days. So the question really is, are the Cavaliers going to be more bummed out that they missed the college football playoff, or are they going to be ready to prove a point For me, it's impossible to say. I will say this, Chandler Morris, an experienced dual threat quarterback, but I'll say this, running quarterbacks, well, that's something that I'd say Missouri's handled pretty well under Corey Batoon, especially this season, holding Diego Pavia really in check, I thought. And by the way, this Virginia passing attack, well, unlike Missouri's quick passing attack, this is much more of a sort of slow developing, hey, let's get the ball downfield type of Virginia passing game. And frankly, if they're not able to run the football against this really strong Missouri front, I don't know how well that's going to go for them. If indeed, again, Missouri's 2 leading pass rushers, a couple of NFL quality players, to me, well, if they're just going to be able to pin their ears back and go after the quarterback, it really could be a long day for this Virginia offense. Again, the fact that this Missouri defense is mostly at full strength, Josiah Trotter not being in the game is a really big deal. He's, again, speaking of NFL quality players, there's no doubt in my mind that Josiah Trotter is going to be in the league one day. So it's a big deal. He's like a one-man run stuffer at the second level of the defense. I don't want to just dismiss his absence. I just want to give a lot of credit to the rest of the strength of this Missouri defense too. And also Corey Batoon, who really has become one of the more underrated coordinators maybe in the SEC here lately, the more I think about it. And to me, I think ultimately Missouri will win this game because like last year against Iowa, it felt like Missouri was ready to play. And I think that's going to be the case here again in 2025. I'm going to give Corey Batoon a lot of credit and a lot of faith here and say that his defense helps Missouri and a young quarterback get home here. It will be interesting to see what exactly the Missouri offensive game plan looks like, not only, of course, with Zollers starting. Missouri's had a couple different game plans, I'd say, with Zollers. He comes in against Vanderbilt. Tigers were fairly conservative there. And then, well, against Texas A&M, it seemed like the Tigers were trying to let Zollers air it out a little bit more into, well, less than awesome results. So not only was Zollers obviously making one of the first starts of his young career here, but also, well, a new offensive coordinator, a new game plan here. Obviously, Kirby Moore is gone. How does Missouri collaborate and maybe change things up here, especially with a couple more weeks than usual to prepare? Also, a Missouri team that probably has more depth than Virginia as well. Should be relatively, all the bangs and bruises that have accumulated throughout the season. Obviously, the major injuries are what they are, but the bangs and the little stuff over the season that does accumulate, well, I thought Missouri looked a little bit more spry in the bowl game last season too. Hopefully that's the case in 2025 in the Gator Bowl as well. Ultimately, I think Missouri does pull this one out. Let's say a fairly low-scoring game, maybe something like, 17-14 or something like that. Now, I know bowl games are not what they used to be, but by golly, it's a football game. And do we ever need a football game as Missouri fans to break up the drudgery that has become Missouri basketball? And in my previous episode recapping the bragging rights game, I just assumed that was the biggest defeat in bragging rights history. I know, as a journalist, I probably should have checked it there live, but my assumption was correct. That 43-point loss by Missouri, not only the biggest in bragging rights history, it's also the largest loss of the Dennis Gates era at Missouri so far, and the 48 points that the Tigers scored was also the lowest total of the Dennis Gates era as well. By the way, 12 total defensive rebounds in that basketball game for Missouri. That's the fewest by the Tigers in any game in the past 25 years. So yeah, we got demolished by Illinois and by a team, and frankly in the second half the Tigers just looked completely out of fight. And the God's honest is that once again this is now becoming to me a season of survival for Dennis Gates, because if what he has to hang, because this season to me is almost all, it's over. I'm writing it off. There is zero chance that this team is going to make a run and somehow sneak into March Madness, especially with how the non-conference schedule played out. What would Missouri have to do in the SEC to sneak into the big dance? I mean, really, they'd have to go win 11, 12 games in the SEC. That's not going to happen. Simply put, this team is not good enough. And for all the talk of, well, Dennis Gates' coaching acumen or lack thereof, I hate to break it to you guys, this really isn't about X's and O's. This is about the Jims and the Joes, to use that incredibly tired cliche. This team just isn't good enough. And when you look at the future here, well, I guess Jason Crow Jr. needs to save this program under Gates. That's a lot of pressure to put on a freshman coming in next season. If you think that's an exaggeration, well, we know Mark Mitchell and Jacob Cruz are going to be gone next season. Hey, Anthony Robinson, assuming he's back for the Tigers next season, will be a senior next year. We're going to be a lot of new faces, and frankly, that much ballyhooed sophomore class, there was a freshman class this previous season, that 5-man class. Well, who is the Jim from that class at the moment? Is it T.O. Barrett? Because it's not Honor Boateng yet. He was the highest ranked one, and quite simply, maybe the injury derailed him early in the season, but Boateng is just not living up to that hype yet. He's just not an SEC starter yet. Neither is T.O. Barrett. Well, Marcus Allen is gone, by the way. He's down in Miami. And by the way, recently was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So a very concerning thing there for that young man. Best wishes out to him. But in terms of Missouri basketball, he's no longer on the roster. Same thing with Peyton Marshall. By the way, Trent Burns, again, can barely even get on the court yet, partially because of injury, somewhat because of development as well. All of that goes into consideration there. So again, that's your 5-man class. If T.O. Barrett and Honor Boateng are supposed to be your big prizes, well, those guys haven't proven to be SEC quality starters yet, and this is their sophomore season. So the point is, what can you count on for their junior seasons? I don't know. You tell me. Not much, I would say. And then, of course, the freshman class for Missouri this year, again, Nicholas Randall barely gets on the court. Aaron Rowe does not get on the court at all. He's clearly taking a red shirt this season. So how much can you count on either one of those two guys next season either? The point here for Missouri basketball, once again, when you looked at the transfer portal class this offseason, when you had Javon Porter coming in, a guy who, again, is not proven to be a high major basketball player yet in his career. Same thing with Luke Northweather, quite frankly. Sebastian Mack at least played at UCLA at that level. I don't know what he's proven yet in his career either. The point is, it didn't take a genius to figure out that, wow, Missouri is not exactly spending as big on their transfer portal class as maybe they did in the past. Or maybe that spending was done in the high school ranks instead. Regardless, however we ended up here, whether it's a lack of NIL, maybe Missouri spending more on football and said to heck with basketball and gone all in on that sport. I don't know what it is, but I just don't know how anybody could have looked at this past offseason and said, yep, we're going all in on basketball. I mean, with Missouri basketball right now, it almost just feels like we need some rich donor to swoop in who just absolutely loves basketball to save it, because for as much as this program and this athletic department is laser focused on football right now, I don't want to see Missouri basketball die. And it just feels like right now, dying may be a strong term, but there's nothing good happening right now. There's just not a lot of hope with Missouri basketball right now. Is it all on Jason Crow Jr., a possible one-and-done type of player? As much as I love his talent, if you're a Missouri basketball fan right now, I don't know what you're really holding on to. What's the hope? Why should you watch this season? I don't have any great answers for you. And of course, as you know by now, Missouri hired Chip Lindsey to be its next offensive coordinator. And I've got some reasons for optimism on Chip Lindsey from the Auburn perspective, by the way. My colleague, Zach Blackerby, was a fan of his work down on the Plains. So let's talk about that coming up here in just a little bit. But you know what? First, we got to talk about game time, because there's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, and of course being right in the middle of all the action. But you know, the frustrating part is often getting tickets. Well, that's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets in just a few taps. I love being able to see my exact view from my seat before buying, so I know exactly what I'm getting. And also, zone deals are great too. If you're not incredibly picky about where you sit, well, you can basically pick a general section. Game Time will pick the seats for you, and you'll save even more money. And take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember when I made fun of that Associated Press report saying that, well, Michigan has reached out to Eli Drinkwitz. Again, this was after the contract extension with Missouri. I had to poke fun at the AP for that. Well, congratulations. They reached out. Is that really worth actually writing something up about it, though? Well, ironically, instead of Eli Drinkwitz going to Michigan, well, Michigan's offensive coordinator this past season, Chip Lindsey, coming to Missouri. And Lindsey has started immediately with the Tigers, though I don't believe he's going to be calling plays for the Gator Bowl. By the way, among some concerns, of course, you know, offensive coordinators, as I've pointed out before, it's tough to be a popular offensive coordinator, especially for very long. Those guys the really popular offensive coordinators tend to end up being head coaches pretty quickly. But on the concern side, well, I hate to say it, Chip Lindsey, he was Kansas's offensive coordinator just for a month, though, so not the end of the world. I think we can forgive him there. But also, when Lindsey got his shot at being a head coach, well, he only made it 3 seasons before being fired as Troy's head coach. And to that, I'll just say, hey, being a head coach and being an offensive coordinator is a very different job. So if Chip Lindsey wasn't a very good fit as a head coach, so be it. We're not hiring him to be a head coach. We've already got one of those. Now, as for how it ended at Auburn with Chip Lindsey, well, you know, Auburn fans can be a bit of a fickle lot, as well, Missouri fans can be too, but it seems like Auburn fans in particular can be a little bit critical, I'll just say that. So, you know, some mixed opinions on Chip Lindsey's time at Auburn. So instead of, well, relying on the crazies on social media, instead I'm going to rely on Zach Blackerby, my colleague over at Locked On Auburn, and he said on Chip Lindsey, he was awesome when we had Kerryon Johnson, who was the great Auburn running back. So the way I interpreted that particular comment is if Missouri can run the football next year, we should be okay. And by the way, Ahmad Hardy is back next season. Looking like Jamal Roberts, there's a decent chance he'll be back next season. I know Eli Drinkwitz was begging for him to stay. Haven't heard any indications there. But regardless, seems like Missouri is going to be a good rushing attack once again next season. They almost always are under Eli Drinkwitz. So if that's the case, if Chip Lindsey's offense works well, the passing element with a good rushing attack, well, I'm not terribly worried about that. Zach Blackerby, by the way, continued on and pointed out, quote, he was good here. So Blackerby, a fan of Chip Lindsey's work at Auburn. To me, that was a very encouraging perspective from Zach because, frankly, it's a different perspective than I was expecting. And again, Zach, a much more reasonable perspective than your average college football fan. That is for darn sure. And hey, hopefully you've enjoyed hearing my perspective on Mizzou football and basketball today for all of you everydayers out there. If you'd like some ad-free shows, by the way, well, you need to join the Everydayer Club to get those ad-free shows and also access to our exclusive Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server. It's $5 a month or $50 a year. Just go to supercast.lockedonmizzou.com or click on the description in this episode, and that'll get you home as well. Again, the Everydayer Club, $5 a month, $50 a year for ad-free shows, Discord access, and more. Check it out. And until next time, I am John Miller, and thanks as always for listening to Locked On Mizzou.